says this. Put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness in this world, and against spiritual wickedness in high places. Okay? Is there anybody in here who doesn't believe the Bible? I'm telling you tonight that this is a true book. These are true words. This is real stuff. I believe it more than anything, more than this floor I stand on. I believe in the words that are in this book because they were here before this floor was ever thought of. And they'll be here long after this perishes. Right? So, check this out. Early military, early 1900s, literally, the boots were so poor that they had these guys wearing. They didn't even have a left or a right boot. Did you guys know that? Some of the first military boots, I mean, it was just like your military boots. They all went together. You had to wear them for a couple of months, and eventually it kind of turned into a left boot. But you know, that was a painful transition. Some blisters. How would you imagine that affected the mobility of those soldiers? How would you imagine that affected their maneuverability when they're like walking around like this, you know, on some feet covered in blisters? So it took a little while for us to learn. You know, it's funny because you would think by 1900 years after Christ, we would have figured out what kind of shoes is going to kill our feet, especially to put somebody on the front line who's fighting for your future, right? But no, we had shoes, we had military boots that had no right or left. It was just put it on, wear it until it fit. Okay? So a lot of times we think, well, let's take the Old Testament for instance. A lot of us think, well, that was for the old days. That's for, you know, that's for the Jews and the Hebrews and the children of Israel and all that stuff. Okay. So if we've come so far that we know so much about life, at what point 2,000 years after Christ came, did we still not know that if we put those boots on those soldiers, they're not going to be mobile and it's going to cost us some battles? Right? Okay, so just saying that we might want to still pay attention to some of the stuff that's written in the Old Testament. Just saying, because there's a way to live. There's very simple things written in that, you know, even as far as where they went to the restroom at. You know, they had to write that down in the book of the law because people didn't know where to go. That still happens today, by the way. Just saying. So, you got somebody trying to find their way in? Yeah. They'll figure it out. There's only one more door. So the blistering on the feet, you know that caused a ton of, you know, a great lack of maneuverability, caused a ton of trouble for those people that were trying to defend their militant groups. So the boot had to fit the foot, right? And the boot had to fit the terrain. So if I go out here when it's wintertime and there's ice out here and I start walking around with these slick-soled shoes, I'm going to be sliding around a little bit, right? Or if I head off across some wet grass, chasing my kids down, probably not going to do very well, right? I'm going to have a little trouble getting caught up to them. So let's look. I want to tell you guys a story. I had a friend in special services, and this was back in the days when I drank a lot of beer and did about everything else I could to numb and destroy my mind so that I didn't have to think about life or deal with things, because dealing with things just sucks, you know. So I would just numb it, and I would add this big addiction problem. And it took me several years before I figured out that, wait a minute, the devil's a liar. This isn't helping. Broke free from that stuff. So that's a whole different lesson in there. But let's talk about the story. This guy, his name was Dave. He was in Special Forces. Awesome guy. Really smart, productive guy. Great family man. Had some awesome military training. And I would always try to get him to tell me stories, you know, about what kind of stuff. Because, I mean, he was in the Special Forces for like 10 years. You know, and in 10 years in Special Forces, some stuff happens. dude's got some stories to tell. You know what I mean? So I was always pumping him for stories, and finally one night he ended up telling me a story, and he said, I'm going to tell you this story, but I have to tell you that the way I'm going to tell it to you isn't going to be actually accurate, because, you know, there's a code of honor between me and the men, you know, that we served with, and I just hope we don't talk. So I'm going to tell you this story. It's going to be similar, but it's not going to be the actual truth. So he starts telling me this story, and he says, so they whatever type of, I believe it was, I can't think of the name of it, but the helicopter that has the two Chinook. He was in the Chinook, and they dropped their boat out. They had they were doing, they basically were going into this area to retrieve someone from another military group. They were going in just like in the movies, you know, they were going to go in and retrieve a person. So they dropped off offshore a little bit in the little boat. There was, who knows how many, he wouldn't tell me how many men, because that of course would have been breached. But he said of one of those men, there was a Native American guy who loved, you know, and even like when they were out doing boot training stuff, and he'd take his boots off, he'd put his moccasins on, because he could run in the woods really fast with them, you know, and he was agile with those moccasins, you know. So he thought, you know, and even when they were going out on these exercises, man, he had his moccasins hidden in with his stuff, and they got on the thing, and they saw him over there lacing up, putting on his moccasins, and the other guys, they were tying their guns off to the boat, you know, getting ready, doing what they were told to do in training. You know, we're getting ready to drop a boat off in the ocean, you know, a little raft in the ocean, and it's going to be a rough ride. So they're preparing for a rough ride. See what I'm saying? And this guy actually, so they get in the boat. He's got his moccasins on, and as soon as they drop, man, in comes this, you know, unexpected waves and stuff, and turns their boat over. You know, and they're good. He says they're, you know, pretty far away from the shore. And this was sort of a tropical area where they were at, and it was a coral reef. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the coral reef, but that stuff is sharp. And I mean, it's just rocks that grow like thorns. It's like rocks with thorns, man. They'll slice you and dice you. Get on Google and look at coral burns, coral rash, you know, from surfers and stuff, and they get cut up when they wreck on that stuff. So they landed on this, and it was a huge bed of coral all the way to land. And this guy who had his moccasins on, by the time they got to the shore, was in bad shape. You know, he grew up, he had something he was very comfortable with, and wanted to take it into a new territory. But it didn't work. In fact, it left him, not only hindered himself, but he had a certain number of other guys who had to babysit him the rest of the trip. He slowed the whole unit down because he wanted to hang on to something. So I want you guys to remember this story I'm telling you, because there's an end inside here, and it has, in fact, what does the Bible say about combat boots? I'm glad you guys asked. We're going to go back to Ephesians chapter 6 again. Let's do that again. I like looking it up every time instead of bookmarking. All right, Ephesians chapter 6. Let's go down here. Okay. Taking to you the whole armor of God, that you may be able to, I started at 13 by the way, that you may be able to withstand the evil day. And having, are we in an evil day? Raise your hand if you guys think we're in an evil day. It's kind of crazy out there, man. It's very crazy out there. Stand therefore, having your loins girded about with truth, having on the breastplate of righteousness, and your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. And then he goes on to talk about, above all, taking the shield of faith. So, what do we put on our feet? What did it just say? What is our spiritual combat boots?
Peace.
The gospel of peace. What is the gospel of peace? I'm glad you guys asked. This is good. This is, when I get to talk about the gospel, I'm about to get excited. Because even in the Webster's dictionary, I went to the Webster's to check this out. Here's what it says in the Webster's. Here's the gospel according to Webster's dictionary. It says, the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. That's what's up, right? That's in the Webster's. We're still there, guys. We're still in the Webster's. All right. So the Farlett's dictionary, which is a new version, it's a very popular online dictionary. It says this. Check this out. It says, a proclamation of redemption preached by Jesus and the apostles, which is the central content of Christian revelation. What do you think about that? Can I read that again? Hold on. The proclamation of redemption. You guys know what redemption is, right? Being redeemed, saved, pulled out of a mess, pulled back to God. Because in order to redeem something, so right now, if Sarah wanted to redeem this Bible for me, she couldn't because she didn't have it before. But see, I can go over here and I can give this Bible to her, and then I can redeem it. Because I had it before, so I can redeem that, to bring it back. Right? So, redemption implies that we lost something, and we can get it back. So let's look at where we lost it. I know individually where I lost it a couple of times. Big time lost it. But as far as mankind, in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve lived in this amazing relationship with God. He created them with the purpose of nothing other than to freely live among these animals and love Him openly, unbridled, and unchained. What happened? The devil didn't like that. So he came in, caused a little bit of trouble, spoke some doubt into Eve, got her to doubt the Word of God. You guys ever had a voice in your ear come in and say, you're not going to die. You're surely not going to die. It won't kill you. Right? You should remember that voice because that's the voice of Lucifer. That's the voice of Lucifer, and he's out to kill you and your family. That's what he does. And he's serious. He's serious and he's mad at God. And it says also in Genesis, it says that we are created in the image of God. See, Satan can't attack God. Right? But he can attack his image. And that's us. Right? So the proclamation of redemption preached by Jesus and the apostles, which is the central content of Christian revelation. This gospel of peace. When we head out into some terrain, we don't want to just take what's comfortable or what looks good. Ladies, if we're headed out here and we're going to go help mow the park one day, are we going to wear the 5-inch stilettos? No, that's right. No, we're not going to wear the 5-inch stilettos to mow the park. We're going to get some good jogging shoes or some shoes that got some padded something because we know we're going to be on our feet all day long. We're going to get something that is comfort, provides comfort from the inside as well as something that's going to provide you traction over here on the slopes. Right? The gospel of peace was created that way.